Hello, everyone, and welcome to Roll Off a Tangent. 15 episode. Can you believe it? 15 times we've met to speak about stories, and tonight is no different. But it is a special occasion, for we're going to talk about something new instead of going to the age-old libraries to find some sort of tome to show you. Tonight, we have something that was created by the podcast and by our challenge. Kaz has took it upon herself to create a story of about 2,500 words called Old Friends. And, well, perhaps we will butcher her writing tonight, or perhaps we'll praise it, who knows. Only time will tell. I was the one who, let's say,
set the challenge.
Set the challenge, spearheaded the idea of the sentence.
Concocted.
So
So Kaz can pretty much blame Nikki for everything.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolute, and I did.
And you did. So if you hated your time writing it, you can blame me. So we gave her a sentence which went something about 2 nights are at a tavern enjoying the end of a long tourney, unknowing that one is planning to kill the other. And when I was thinking about the story, I was thinking about some sort of a great Greek tragedy that is about to occur, or perhaps a Shakespearean play that is about to unravel right in front of us. The stage set for something grievous. So that was basically where I was coming from when I created that idea for the challenge. XJ, do you do you believe that Kaz could do something interesting with fantasy? I mean, she's wrote space operas.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
What a question to ask me. Do you believe that Kaz is capable? What?
You thought it would be an easy time, but it isn't. Shouldn't have put me at the front of this.
Dude, wow, what a question, man. Yeah, of course Kaz can write fantasy.
Really? So, what, in your opinion, what is the difference between science fiction and fantasy then? Is there a difference?
There is a difference, obviously, but that science fiction to me has an integral component of a science fiction story has to do with technology and how that technology affects society. To me, that is an integral part of science fiction, which fantasy doesn't have. It can have.
Hold on, just 1 second, because this story's got trebuchet and it's got some technology in there, but it's still a fantasy.
Fantasy is not a bunch of cave barbarians clubbing each other, Kaz. So yes, it can have technology, but it is not a requirement. Whereas if you have science fiction and you have no technology, then it is not science fiction. That's the only difference. Everything else is the same. So why wouldn't Kaz be able to write fantasy?
So from what XJ say, how much do you disagree with him, Robert? And
Rob looked like he was thinking, right? Yeah.
I'm trying to decide why one should call Kaz's story fantasy, because to me it seems like a historical epic, or in an alternate world or something. It seems if you've got to call it either science fiction or fantasy, it's more science fiction to me.
Maybe that is wishful thinking on my side, because I love fantasy, so I've decided that it is fantasy. But you're right. Perhaps it is, more of a historical. What is it called? Account. However, all the name drops of fantastical things like. I'm gonna. You know what? I'm not even gonna say it right now. I'm gonna save my rant for later. But regardless,
Ooh.
But regardless, it gave me a feeling of a alternative world. And for me, if the world is not ours, that is already fantasy.
Oh, heck, that's a very, very daring statement to make.
It is, isn't it? I'm glad that you're disagreeing with me more than you are with XJ. So
you're kind of purloining an entire subgenre of science fiction and annexing it into fantasy.
Well, fantasy came first, right? Yeah, I mean,
if you mean like Homer, for example.
Right. I mean, I love space opera and everything, but I have to admit that fantasy came first, and science fiction came out of fantasy. I think you have to be honest about that. I think.
Yeah. So to some extent, we're talking about flavors, aren't we?
Yeah. Is it lemon cake? Does it taste like the devil's kiss? Who knows? But the line that I'm trying to sort of like establish here is this is not Kaz's comfort zone, right? She had to write in something that she did not know as much, not because like she didn't read about it, or it's more that from your own words, Kaz, you haven't worked with that sort of fiction before that much, right?
Right. Yes, hardly at all. And it's not one that I'm terribly comfortable with. So what I did was that I thought, well, since Nikki has given me a prompt that is obviously medieval fantasy from the word tawny, right? So I read the word tawny and it was also about 2 knights. And so in that case, that set the time period for me. And then from the last podcast that we did, XJ was talking about focus, right? See, I'm blaming you as well for this, XJ.
That's okay.
So
I love taking blame.
So XJ was talking about focus. And then when I thought 2,500 words, I thought, let me do something, because if you're not going to experiment with a short story, when are you going to experiment, right? So I decided that since you guys were taking me and walking me along the gangplank, I might as well go completely overboard. And so that's when I came up with the structure of the story.
Robert, could you summarize to us the story of Old Friends? What transpired within for those viewers who wish to know?
Yeah, the 2 knights in the tavern are having what starts off like a friendly discussion and ends up as an increasingly bitter argument until they realize that each of them they have basically killed each other. One of them by poison and the other by arranging that there's no way out of the tavern, except one that's guarded by enemy soldiers who are intent on not letting him leave alive. And the dialogue takes that turn because of a political disagreement. One knight wants to support the war against a particular city and the other knight wants to oppose it. And this may seem rather dry, but actually the whole thing sparkles. It kind of whooshes you along like a sparkling stream of wit, but in the sense of banter, I suppose. But banter becoming increasingly acerbic until, as I say, they realise that they've cooked each other's geese, to use an idiom.
Yes, and the entire story is written in a way where there's only dialogue. There's no description of where they are. There's no description of the circumstances around them. It is simply dialogue of these 2 individuals that goes on, and the story tells tells the tale entirely through speech, which I thought was a very brave idea to do, definitely.
Yeah, it's also a very handy way of keeping it under 2,500 words, because otherwise you're going to have lots of he saids and he saids and meanwhiles and so on, and it all starts getting too much fat on the bone.
Right. There was a story I wanted to tell. It wanted to be the 2 deaths, but how to engineer it in as little space as possible. Well, or as close to 2,500 words as possible. And I think it came to 2,509.
That's a
So,
that we will have to levy a heavy penalty for that.
Like we keep score. So the thing that really began to concentrate my mind on the story was how, like, the first time I began reading it, I felt like should I tell Kaz that she like forgot to put some stuff in? And then I realized, no, that is just dialogue. Oh, right. And then I began reading it, understanding that this is just going to be dialogue. And as soon as I gave up on the fact that there will be no scenery, it became a much more enjoyable situation for me, right? To actually read it. I'll tell my thoughts first, I guess. So overall, the story reminded me of something that I've experienced many times before. You are with a relative or a good friend, and you disagree on something. You know it's coming. You know it's going to approach a point within your conversation that you're gonna have to talk about it. And sometimes you delay as much as possible. You don't really want to do anything about it, and yet it will just come out. And when it does come out, it becomes uglier and uglier and uglier the more you've been trying to sort of like hold it back. And the progression of that you can really see within the story. These men clearly perhaps loved each other at some point, right? Like they were brothers. They saw each other as people who they would have by their side forever. The venom and the regret in one particular line really struck to me when they're talking about where the son of Galadel went, right? Where he was hosted, where he got to become a man.
Oh, Rose, yeah, Rose's son got squired to the Duke of Welderin.
Yeah, and the fact that it didn't happen, like, because Galadel doesn't really show that much emotion throughout the entire thing, anyways. But Dad, it really scorned him. He really didn't like that. And then there was a moment where Galadel got to sort of bring that back around and make the other suffer, because he knew something that the other didn't. And I'm just gonna read it. That was what I was going to say to you. Leave behind the madness of the council and see the reason. You were once a reasonable man. Valderin and I have often... Valderin has been taken. It will be announced tomorrow. A trial in 3 days, an execution in 4. You jest, surely. No. I don't know what to say. A sorrowful surprise, Galadel. Your hand trembles, Ro. Surprise or cowardice? You will not understand my answer. Love, Galadel. It is love. I think that, like, those two moments coming together through the script, with it just being dialogue, I think was very, very strong. I really liked it. Probably the best part for me, to just see how much these people at one point meant to each other. And how much they're willing to hurt one another at this point. Overall, a great story with a lot of interesting twists. And, I think it speaks for itself when it ends, and I want to know, but what happened to Galadel? Did he live? Did that sword help him? Did he escape? Did he die like a hero? And I'll never know. And that's okay.
Right, because it's just a vignette, right?
Yeah.
With a short story. You only have enough space like this, the way that it was structured for a vignette. So, yeah. I mean, the other thing is what happened to Ro's son, who was squired to Valderin, right? Because if Valderin was taken, then what does that mean to his household? And I deliberately left that one open as well.
Yeah. Oh man.
Rob, you have you had something you wanted to say? I could see you wanted to jump in.
Oh no, just a minor point. I very much doubted that Galadol could escape. It would spoil the story if he did. Really, I mean, the symmetry of it. They both got to.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. I'm not saying that that would be a better story if he survived or something. It's more like I'm wondering now. It made me wonder. That's really the power of it. But we had a discussion with Kaz. Well, I'm not even going to call it a discussion. It was like 3 texts basically, because I was like, "What is Rock of Chenon?" And she was like, "Whatever, it's nothing."
It is what it is.
It is what it is, which is it's nothing. If you guys don't speak that sort of language, so I decided that I'm going to write what is the Rock of Chenon. So here it is. This is what the Rock of Chenon is, and I don't care that it's not what you think it is, Kaz. A great mountain that was populated by a nation of cave dwellers. That this rock place was so impervious and insurmountable that the tales of its might spread all across the world. No one came close to defeating the people of Chenon, for they always hid within the mountain that gave them life. A great disaster followed. Molten rock fell from the sky. Although Chenon remained standing, all those who lived within perished from smoke and cinder. Yet rock lived on. This is where the saying comes from: steady as the Rock of Chenon.
Okay, well, it was. So, do any of you guys? Have any of you guys done any horse riding? I actually like that, and that fits. Right. So, okay. So, I mean, if you, or, like I read, I've also read the La Mort d'Arthur, right? So, the death of Arthur. And when you joust, when you get on a horse, when you do things and someone tries to knock you off, your seat, right? The way that you sit on the horse has to be as solid as possible. So actually, that description and that mythology behind the rock is just a lovely little grace note, I think, to the story. Actually,
so we heard it here first. I made the story work. So everyone, welcome.
Okay.
No, I'm joking. But it is something that irks me in a way where when I write something, I don't know. For me, I want everything to have some sort of a description, and it's redundant a lot of the times because the readers will not care as much as you do about all of those details at some point. But yeah, it was a fun exercise for me. So thank you for telling me it's nothing, so I could make something. Rob, what? Oh yeah, go on. Actually.
No, I was just about to ask the same thing. What are your thoughts, Rob, about the story as a whole?
Yeah.
Well, I just think that it's definitely not fantasy. I mean, I'm sorry to return to this point, but there's no way it's fantasy. No way, no magic, no.
But the Rock of Chenon.
Right.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you how extreme the story can be and still not be fantasy.
Okay.
I've written this is, sorry about the advertising. I've written a trilogy of novels set on a version of Earth where there's a definite up and down that doesn't change. That is to say, up is up and down is down. It doesn't matter where you are. So on the North Pole region is the only place where there's any flat ground. And then the ground starts to slope down and down and down until at the equator, the surface of the planet is vertical. And then the southern hemisphere, you have to sort of grab the grass or something and you sort of dangle into infinity. You see what I mean? Now, I call that science fiction because it's simply an alternative universe with different laws, but the laws are self-consistent and therefore it's science fiction. I have to invent quite a few laws to make it consistent. But still, now you might say, well, in something like The Lord of the Rings, the laws maybe are consistent too, but they're just not explained. And I would agree. But here the business of flavors comes in. That you've got to have some coherence in any form of writing. Otherwise, it's just a completely boring medley of random impressions. But the coherence in fantasy is mostly qualitative, I would say, rather than to do with forces. I mean, there are forces, but they can be malevolent or benevolent forces. They're not sort of neutral, natural forces.
I see. So the Conan stories, they are presented as history before history began.
Yeah, but they're all fantasy because they
but they're fantasy because they have snakes, right? Snakes with human heads.
Each of them has a supernatural element. There's no.
But you could have an evolved species that, like, they have a torso snake, a torso of a snake. I mean, like the length of a snake, and then the head of a person. That could also happen. So that could also be science fiction, right?
Well, yes. Now you're talking about the God in the bowl. I agree.
Now, you see, hold on, Rob. Arthur C. Clarke said that when a civilization is sufficiently advanced, their science is indistinguishable from magic.
I'm afraid that's a typical Clarkean, rather fatuous statement, because he's only considering the effect on an outsider. He's not considering what it actually is intrinsically when he says that.
Okay.
He means the readers. For the reader, it's like fantasy, anyways, because they can't imagine living with these commodities or like whatever he means.
That's not quite right. When Arthur C. Clarke made that statement, it was more like an alien civilization coming into contact with a much more much more primitive civilization, and from the primitive civilization's point of view, flying through the ether, in a giant spaceship, all that looks like magic.
It's cargo cult. It's the cargo cult, and they actually do exist, right? Yeah, XJ is actually correct on that one. Yeah, because during World War II, so the old story goes, when planes were flying over Papua New Guinea, because it was part of the Pacific Theater during the war, the Papua New Guineans would see these planes flying, and they thought they were just supernatural flying machines, and they actually built planes out of whatever material they had around, and they used to burn it ritually in order to get blessings and everything from these beings that were flying through the air, but in things that they didn't know were airplanes, but that's what they were.
Yeah, because they used to drop out supplies, right?
Right, exactly. Yes, they used to drop
and
supplies.
so they were wishing for more supplies from the sky, like gifts from the gods. Yeah, but you dashingly dodged the question. But Robert, what did you think about Old Friends?
I was enormously impressed. I thought it sparkled, as I say. It's obviously there's a lot that it can't be in just 2,500 words. But what could be done in that limit has been done. If it were much longer and it was still the same sort of thing, it wouldn't have worked. You would start to get too. It would start to be too strenuous. It's like, for example, 7,500 words in that sort of dialogue, you'd start to gasp with exhaustion. But 2,500 is just about right.
Yeah, it works really well. I agree. And yeah, I said this to Kaz privately too. I can't imagine myself reading a book in this style. Right? I think I would probably hang myself. But otherwise, on its own, the story fits very well with the way it's written and the way it's produced. So, XJ, how much do you hate it?
Well, I have that I actually thought the story was excellent.
We were taking bets.
I lost. How much do I owe you?
Yeah, I saw that in the chat, and I'm like, these guys are so uncharitable.
I thought. So I thought. What were your thoughts? Yeah.
So, well, I will echo what the other two said. If this is a actual novel length story, I would have set it aside. I wouldn't have bothered because it would get increasingly difficult to keep track of who's who and what's going on when the story becomes longer. And so it would have been, as Rob said, an exercise in endurance to if the story had been longer than what it is. So at this particular length, it works really well. And I see it as a very to me it had a very play structure, like a theater structure. Often in theater script writing classes that I took in my misspent youth, you would have people who would just write entire monologues, sometimes maybe a dialogue, and then someone would come in, and then and there's pretty much nothing except a chair and two people talking, and that gave me that it has a very similar vibe for me.
I mean, you said that as well, Nikki. Yeah, when we were having a little private convo about it. Yeah,
it did give me that feeling. And the other thing I would say is that I am extremely impressed with the technical capability of this short story, because you absolutely can do that, because
you're not into short stories, are you? That's the trouble.
Totally. No,
right.
but actually what I was trying to get at, I'm trying to think of a way to describe it, like when a story relies so heavily on one particular thing, that is in this case it's dialogue, then it's like cooking an egg. You have nothing else except the egg, and so the egg has to be really, really good in order to be able to carry itself. So a person who sings with no instrument in the background, then the voice and the training has to be really, really good to carry it off. And this, I feel like this short story has that. It is because it has nothing else. It doesn't have world building, it doesn't have description, it doesn't have any sort of thing like that at all. And so like the tension between the characters, the dialogue, whether you could immediately identify who is talking, that's a big deal, because when you have nothing else, like the speech then has to carry the name, right? It has to be identifiable. So to me, this short story is a very good example of the kind of writing ability. It's a showcase of writing ability, I think, for Kaz, and I am very impressed. Can't say much about the world building because there's nothing. I don't care.
The Rock of Chenon.
The Rock of Chenon, yeah.
Thank you, Robert.
Whatever it is. I like.
It is.
I read it and I was like, yeah, okay, not enough description to go by, so probably just a prop.
Probably volcanic, I should think.
Yeah, Rock of Chenon.
As for all the other stuff, I think, I would say I probably wouldn't be that interested if it's further expanded, because it feels very much like a very, like, I mean, like the story is structured in a the setting of the story is a very typical political struggle within a kingdom, and I probably wouldn't be that fascinated by the world building unless there's really something different about it. I think for this, particular short story, the focus, start to finish, are characters, and they're beautifully done. And so I think, yeah, amazing story. I wish I can write characters that well.
And here I was thinking you didn't like characters that much, XJ.
I don't. I have nothing against great characters, though. To me, characters are toppings, and the world building is the structure that allows, is the stage basically that allows the characters to play their part. And obviously, most people would be very taken with the drama between the characters, but to me, if the characters don't have a solid foundation to stand on, I would not be very taken with it. And Nikki clearly disagrees with me.
I mean, when I don't disagree with you is when we have a miracle, right? So
that's true.
Sorry, go on, Rob.
So it's just something XJ reminded me is the stories, the books by Dumas about D'Artagnan, the Three Musketeers, and its sequels. It's been heavily criticised for lacking sensuous descriptions of the settings. But if you are interested in 17th century France anyway, as I am, then the settings come sort of as a bolt-on thing from elsewhere. Do you know what I mean? So you can say, right, well, I've studied 17th century France. That's great. So I know roughly what the setting is, and I can just enjoy the action and the dialogue, because Dumas is great for action and great for dialogue. He's not so good for putting in the picture about how it actually feels to be in a place. He's got very little sense of place, unfortunately, but I still enjoy his books.
It is much easier to do that with something that is connected to the real world, right? Like where there's a lot of dressing that's already prepared. But you probably couldn't do that with a science fiction idea where everyone has a fish on their head. You'd have to kind of explain something.
Yeah.
Why it's fish and not octopus, for instance.
Well, that's a good question that the author of that story will surely answer one day. But until that day, I will speak my piece regarding defending Kaz's honor, the idea of continuation. I think you should absolutely write something more about this world, because there could be something there.
No, I actually agree with XJ on this one. Yeah, for me, it was, there was the keywords, the knights, the tawny, and that started it off. And it was the inspiration for it came very much from the old Arthurian cycle, right, of legends.
I noticed that with the names, yeah.
Right. So, so there, and XJ is right. I mean, what could I possibly write that could compare to the Arthurian cycle, for example? And so many other authors have done so much with that, right? So I would feel like no, I did this. I hadn't done anything Arthurian before, right? I thought it was a fantasy, but okay, it's not. And I hadn't done a full-on just convo and nothing else before. And I'm actually thinking maybe for the next challenge, I will just do all description and not a single line of conversation.
That's what I did for my story. My story.
Yeah. Oh,
Very
you see, because I mean, we have this challenge. It is for a short story, and I think that this is this is what I thought. I thought this was a good way. We have three of you, all writers, right? So this would be actually a fantastic arena to stretch ourselves, and that's what I thought I would do. I thought I would stretch myself, do something I had never done before.
I'm just gonna do another comedy
and see how it turns out.
I'm joking.
Take it away. Take it away.
All right. No, nobody cares. So, the struggle of the entire situation gave me pause, because I was trying to figure out what kind of conflict is Lamelin, what is going on there, why is Rose so against that happening, right? So there was a lot of sort of internal struggle between those two characters that was what is it called, invisible to us, but what was really strong was the fact that they were so passionate about it, and that the passion only grew and only became stronger and stronger. And I think that's why it worked without that much information about what the actual thing is, who is on the council, why they don't want other people to have their opinions, and so on and so forth. Right? There a lot of things that were quote unquote not there were sort of powered by this dialogue that surpassed those questions. So that was nice. I think though there was a lot of also struggle for me to understand why, like, why did it come this far? Why couldn't they find sort of like a a common ground? When you were writing this, were you thinking about that they've had previous conversations, that this is not the first time that they've
This is
spoken
not the
about?
first time. This is not the first time that they've done this, right?
Mhm,
There have been decisions that that were made in the past. Okay, this is they want laminal. I call it lanolin. Okay, that was the nickname I gave it. They want lanolin because it's sort of like a Lebensraum. Okay, so the kingdom wants to go there because the place is rich. It's got a lot of room. There are not too many people there. They think they can take it, right? And Rose's objection to that is, okay, they may have a lot of room, they may have a lot of assets, right? They may have a lot of riches, but they also have a damn fine navy, right? And you can talk, and I mean, you can talk about all of your siege engines and all of this kind of stuff being used. But the thing is that that's not going to matter a damn if somebody manages to plonk a cannonball, or if somebody manages to plonk some big thing amidships, or for your ships and sink it, then all of that is going to be for naught. So this is where, and this is Rose faction trying to say, my God, you're just too greedy. You're just trying to take this country, this kingdom, this other kingdom. And Galadriel going, you just do not understand. We're the best.
So, in your opinion, who's right? Lamelin will happen. So, who's right? Is I mean, both of the men are dead, so it doesn't matter for them. But what will
Well, you see, I tend to think that lanolin will win.
Okay.
Because I do study military history, and strong navies are really good, and they know the territory. The kingdom is actually bringing the fight to them, right? So they're actually engaging on enemy territory with enemy assets there that everybody already knows about. So if I were to put a coin on it, I would be on Rose's side with this one and say, don't do it.
I absolutely agree because for one thing, you have no way of transporting all those very fine siege engines across the ocean.
Water, right?
Across the ocean. If the other side has such a fine navy, they will just shoot the ships full of holes, just sink them, and then they have no way of getting their supplies across. Two, and the terrain thing is actually a big deal because in my experience, marching through unfamiliar territory is extremely difficult. Very, very hard. Yeah.
I mean, it looks one way on the map, but when you actually have to do it in person, it's something that's completely different. And actually, yes, you're right, XJ, because there is that in this conflict, right? Because Rose is trying to say how you think it is not actually how it is in reality. So don't do it. But it doesn't quite work for either of them.
I see. So the council are a bunch of idiots. Got it. Awesome.
No, basically people in authority are.
Roll off a tangent. Love
The
all of our
political
leaders.
podcast, Military History 101 in the lens of Levelin. Yeah, okay.
The Rock of Chenon. So
He's really stuck on that.
I love
He's
the
really
Rock
stuck
of
on
Chenon.
that.
I will steal it. I will take it. So
Sounds like the Stone of Scone.
Right, the Stone of Scone. Yeah.
So Robert, who when you were reading, whose side were you on? Did you pick a side? When you were reading it, did your mind go to like, yeah, this guy sounds less of a prick?
Yeah, I'm a bit wet, a bit of a peacenik, so I would go with the objecture,
Row.
objecture. Yes, I've been reading the Brothers York about Edward IV and his brothers, the Duke of Clarence and the future Richard III, and they're really that time. It's a brilliant book, but I feel that the stupid people at the top and their stupid subjects actually deserve each other. They're all absolutely grade A idiots. They seem to think that declaring war on France would be a good idea because it would give them all something to do. And
What is that the reason?
They don't seem to realise that winning would have been even worse than the probable event of losing. Because if you win, if the King of England becomes really well established as the King of France, he's just going to move to Paris and his descendants are going to forget all about England and just treat it as a conquered province. So, not as conquered, but a minor
An annex.
Yes. So it's all self-defeating, but they don't see that. Anyway, fortunately, it didn't happen that way. But still, for 500 years, almost, the kings of England and then of Britain claimed to be also kings of France. I don't know how they negotiated with the actual kings of France while doing that, because surely if you've got to call this other king reigning in Paris something, and presumably protocol would demand that you address him as King of France. But how can you do that when you're claiming that you're King of France? I don't know.
That Froggy. That's what you guys would have called him. Just would have called him that Froggy.
Really?
I don't know. It's a serious diplomatic issue, I think. But I don't know how it was resolved.
Roll of a Tangent podcast does not believe that people from France are frogs. You're destroying us tonight. What am I supposed to do here?
I'm not. I don't even live in Europe.
Out of there. XJ, whose side were you on? Was it Galdel or was it Roe?
I don't care. But if a gun was put to my head,
it is.
I would have to go with Roe, just because the consequences of. Let me rephrase myself.
Okay.
Going to war would benefit a small number of people. And if I happen to be one of those small number of people, I might just support Galadel. And I think that is why the council wants to go to war. Like the backstory is not really explained, but that tends to happen. It benefits a small number of people, but not the rest. Whereas the chances are that I would be one of the multitudes, and that war would have been disastrous for those people, and I would be against just because of self-interest, and it's actually difficult to say whether the country that is thinking of waging war, I can't remember what it is, would win the war. That's a different story, because there are more than one ways to fight a war, and the Habsburg family did that very well. just to borrow some European history, because although they consistently lose the wars that they fight on ground, their diplomatic capabilities in terms of playing one player against another, their web of alliance is just gets them where they need to be, and diplomacy is an integral part of war.
For sure.
Yeah. So it depends on how flexible the council is in waging this war. It totally could. Well, Kaz is shaking her head. Then if that's the case, then the council is gonna lose. Yeah.
So I didn't know that their plan was stupid, but that's okay. So I will stick to my plan, to my guns. I am Team Galadel. Go away, all of you stupid Rose supporters. Even the writer, even the author, like whatever, man. I don't care.
No, I will. Yeah, I will say this is that I wanted to have Galadel as well as a sympathetic character, right? Yes, he's a bluff, sort of like loudmouth asshole kind of a guy, right? He is. Okay, yeah.
That's why
I wonder
love him.
who I used for inspiration. No, but
I knew there was something of Galadel in me. Sorry, go on.
But the thing is that there isn't a very strong story if you can't find something, if you can't relate to something, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted the readers to feel like, okay, Ro, but I also wanted them to go, okay, Galadel, he's an asshole, but then again, right at the end, as he says to Laren's son, right, after calling him all kinds of names and telling him to get up there and all this kind of stuff, right, and after doing all of that, right at the end, where he just says to Laren's son, get behind me.
Yeah, stay behind me.
Stay behind me as we go up the stairs, right? So, I wanted Galadel to have some kind of redeeming quality as well.
Yeah.
So.
But that, it makes a lot of sense. I related to him because I am him. I guess that makes sense. No, honestly, Galadel seemed to me like the person who was winning all the points during the arguments, because, like, to me, he seemed to be speaking sense. Because if you wanna topple something like the council, right, like the people who are above you, you don't start shouting around it and then telling everybody how much you hate them. Like, this is so idiotic as an idea. Like, Ro, you're gonna get yourself killed. This is like, probably maybe, like, this is what I've imagined in my head. Galadel probably once said to Ro, like, you should shut the fuck up. Like, you can have these thoughts and you can slowly undermine them, but, like, to talk about it, like, you should. And then Ro's like, you don't understand. This is for our glory of our country. They're ruining us. Whatever. Right.
And but Nikki, when Galadel said that, look, we know what you've been saying, but you better keep your mouth shut, right? At that point, Galadel had already given the poison to Ro.
Oh yeah, I know.
Right.
So yeah,
it was kind of like
he was. From my understanding, he came into that tavern knowing that Ro had to die. Right. So. I don't feel like he was a bad person simply because he had a horrible plan in his mind. Because as we found out, Ro is no better. He got a bunch of men here to kill Galadel. And honestly, I'd rather die from poison, like, than be stabbed a bunch of times by people.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, that's an interesting question. What about you, other two chaps? Poison or being stabbed a lot by people?
Roll off a tangent.
I'm told that hemlock is not too painful, but it does inhibit the breath, so maybe it's not that pleasant. I don't know. But some poisons are much worse than being stabbed to death, I should think.
Yeah, for sure. That's true as well.
Some mushroom poisons, I should think.
XJ? What about you?
I would like to bring as many people down with me when I go down. And so I would like to have the chance to clobber as many people as possible and to make it painful for them as I could possibly make it as I'm going down. So that's me. I would take the sword route and I will make sure to gut as many people as I can before I'm gutted myself. Yeah.
How noble. And
No,
Kaz,
just how bloodthirsty.
I'm good with
that was
sword.
sarcasm. Yeah. Your sword. You want to die by the sword.
Mm.
Okay.
Mhm.
You ever been stabbed before, Kaz?
Maybe.
Okay. Well, it really sucks, don't you think?
Maybe.
So honestly, I'd rather I'm gonna like choke for a bit, but I'd rather choke for a bit than I don't know.
Yeah, but you see,
feel a
like
bunch
with
more swords.
Ro, okay, he lost feeling. He started convulsing. His lips turned black, and
Yeah, but
you
he's
know,
a traitor, so he deserves it.
under
Yeah,
those
sorry.
circumstances, I think I would go out with with pokey. I
With
would
the pokey.
with the sword. Yeah, with the sword.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
I feel like my body is that of a dog, so like it heals pretty quickly and it like keeps me going in places where it shouldn't keep me going. So I think my body would actually work against me if I got stabbed a couple of times, because they just leave me on the ground and for hours I'd just be in agony until I died, because my body would leave me alive. So I think poison would do the
okay.
job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. So it's
It's a personal
two
preference.
versus two. Yeah. 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 Exactly.
And what is it called? To answer your to sort of say like, yeah, actually you wanted to take down as many people with you as possible with a sword. I wouldn't do that with a sword. I'd have like a red button that like sends a nuclear strike somewhere.
Well, I mean, yes.
I can push that as I'm dying.
Except in the context given, no one has a nuclear bomb.
It's true. It's
And
true.
the most the biggest weapon of destruction I can think of is to probably pee into the water supply.
Yeah, that would definitely kill a lot of people. So okay, awesome. We've discussed how we would wish to die if we were in the story. I think the fact that you started with Galadel and kind of had him through here the entire time, being sort of like the lead in here, no matter what. Obviously, it's about these two characters, but Galadel is clearly the lead for me.
Yep. Yep.
I think it works pretty strongly that in the end we don't see his fate, right? I really like that we left to wonder. I've mentioned that before, but what's something that occurred to me in the middle of the story was if Galadel sort of knows does he? Yeah, okay, that's actually the question, I guess. Does he know that Ro is just as treacherous as he? That he will have warriors here, or is that like a fact that surprises him? Like
It surprised him.
It surprised him.
It surprised him because he thought that Ro was a lot weaker than he first right. I mean, Galadel goes in. Well, this was what was going through my mind. Galadel goes in, and he thinks he's got all of the advantages, and that's why the story starts off with him, because he's the one who can afford to say whatever he wants, right? Because he's cock of the hoop, right? You know, he's the dude, and so he's just in a way thinks that he's playing with Ro.
All right.
Yeah, and he's quite willing. He's quite willing to pay for everything, right? Okay, he's paying for the dinner. He's paying for the wine. He paid for the venison, right? Because he thinks that there's nothing that Ro can do to him. There's nothing that Ro can say to him, right? And so Galadel paying for everything is a measure of his confidence in walking out of that tavern door. Right. Okay. And then it doesn't quite turn out that way, because the guy that he thought of as a weakling, and in fact, the one who uses the word love, right? The one who Galadel thought was the weaker one actually turns around and surprises.
Yeah.
So this could be the beginning of an insurrection or something like that against the council. Yes.
I totally read this as like it totally could have fitted in, like I said, into any historical uprising kind of civil war drama.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I agree. So, I'm gonna go away and write my essay on why Galadel is the greatest of all characters and why he should live.
Focus on your book, Nikki.
I feel a lot of personal interest there. So the 10 facts about Galadel and why he's so great. No, but to be honest, Ro seems to me like the person who's in the right in this situation, but Galadel is more compelling, and sometimes that's kind of the death of your argument. Even if you're fighting for what's right, if the other person is just far more capable of swinging the crowd their way, there's nothing you can do, no matter how right you are. So I think I think that really shone through the story.
They are archetypes. There are, and hence XJ's term, that the fact that you can take these characters and basically drop them into any conflict, any kind of political armed conflict out there, right? Because they are archetypes. And the nice thing about writing archetypes is that people already know subconsciously those archetypes. So you don't have to fill them in too much. Right. I mean, it's only when you have a character like Conan, who's this huge guy, right, and you expect him to be a thug, but in actual fact, he's actually a very, very intelligent man, very strategic thinker. It's when you break out of that mold that you have to do a lot of explanation. But if you write archetypes, then, and that's why I use them for the short story, you can just use short strokes with that and not that many. And actually, the reader's subconscious will do the rest of the work for you.
Yeah, the writer in that case is a sort of conduit, a sort of pipeline between the archetype and the reader.
Right. And if you can bring that, and if you can sort of bring up, and if you get people who go, oh, yeah, I know someone like that, right, then half the job, half the battle is already done, right, already won, if you like. So that was a deliberate choice to have them sort of archetypal, but not Ro so much, I do admit, but certainly Galadel, because then he's the one who sort of like brings you in, because there's so much about him at the beginning, right? So he's the bait, if you like, to bring in the reader. Yeah, because I think everybody knows a Galadel character. Yeah.
It's easy when you just have to look in the mirror.
Oh, sure. Okay.
So, all right. That's a good way to put it. When you oh, sorry, go on, Rob.
No, sorry, I just going off at a tangent here, but then we're supposed to do that. Yeah, I invented a word today, resh, R-E-S-H. It's a contraction. It's a contraction of retro finish, and I think that the meaning of history and all that only becomes apparent as a sort of gloss that's put on long after the events have happened. So that's why we can romanticize this horrid business of sordid business of medieval conflicts and so on. A sort of glow patina gets put on it because we retro finish it, and I'm trying to think of some moral arguments in favor of this process. Like, for example, you could say that it's easy to say it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth all the suffering and pain and so on and oppression just so that we could sit back and enjoy these romantic stories. But then I could say, well, all right, it was overpriced. The goods are overpriced, but that doesn't mean that we are justified in rejecting the goods. We just need to find a way of getting them at a fairer price. So I don't know. That's how I've been thinking about it. How to manufacture history without all the sordid bits. It's quite a challenge, that.
You could, I think, with today's technology, you could build an algorithm that could create such history. There'd probably be like a lot of places where it's just a mess and you don't understand any of the words that the AI wrote. But then there will be glimpses, there will be chapters, there will be sentences that will be so provocative that it will feel like real history.
Well, we're actually going to become, well, those of us who are fairly young, like yourself, we're actually probably going to become actors in some sort of neo-medieval drama, in the sense that our culture is so unsustainable. It's heading for an almighty apocalyptic collapse. and survivors will just be stumbling around in a sort of neo-medieval situation. I'm probably vastly exaggerating, but there's something in it,
but not by much. Yeah.
If the post-apocalypse happens, right, and there's no technology or whatever, and we can't, like, the guns have all run out of bullets, I'm gonna take a sword and I'll call myself Galadel just for you, Kaz.
Okay.
No, I'll run around and.
On my part, I'll be very sad if the post-apocalyptic world doesn't have zombies in it. Yeah, I'll be pretty sad.
Is that all you want? That's your only wish?
That's all.
Just zombies. All right, cool. Got it.
Train to Busan. Have you seen that?
Oh, I love that show.
Wasn't it fantastic?
It is.
Fantastic movie.
What is it?
And see, here it is. Here is another example of that I don't dislike well-written characters. The entire thing is very character-driven. It's very, very powerful.
It is, yeah. It was.
Very powerful.
Is it? What is it? Is it a TV show?
It was a Korean movie. It was a Korean movie. It was called Train to Busan. I believe they've made a sequel. But the first one, the movie, the original, was it? Yeah, it was a movie. It was fantastic. Absolutely. Korean movies, I am such a fan. Talk about tight writing. Brilliant.
It's funny that you mentioned the Korean works, because I've watched something.
He's very into Squid Game now.
Well, I'm not into it, so they, don't put words in my mouth.
Oh, yeah, sure, Nikki. There's no need to be shy.
We're just friends, me and the Squid Game. So a friend of mine told me it sucks, don't watch it. So I watched it, obviously. After that, because if it's such a visceral reaction, you should. For me, that's all you need. If you have a negative reaction, even, but it's so passionate, I would really want to find out why you hated it so much and so forth. But I personally enjoyed it, and it reminded me a bit of the long walk that we did, like so many episodes ago. Yeah, so it fixed a lot of problems in the long walk where it didn't make sense. So like the first episode, basically, Squid Games is a horrible sort of competition where about 450 plus people enter, and they will all basically die except for one, as we find out. And it's all just simple 6 games that they have to get through, and these games are they're child like, what is it called? Like stuff you would play on the playground, right? There's like red light, green light, type of stuff. So there's an entire scene where there's this just corridor, basically this huge room, and there's a robot that says green light, so then you can run, and then when it says red light, you better not move, and if you move, it shoots you and you die. That's it. Goodbye. Like a single mistake. And there's plenty. I'm not going to spoil like all the other cool small games that they introduced there, because part of the fun is finding out what the game is. But at the end of the second episode, I believe they all vote, because one of the rules of the Squid Game is that if majority votes that we should stop the games are stopped and you go. And they vote and they stop the games. And then the people who played all those games go back to their lives. And the organizers of the Squid Game, they were very particular with the type of people they picked for it. They picked people who have nothing in their life, who are in debt, who have horrible existence. And so little by little, we would see in the episode all of these people slowly realizing how crap their life is, and that they would want to go back to the Squid Games, because there they could actually earn money. They could actually make a difference in their life. That like coming back to their awfulness that they live every single day is worse than death for them. Right? That's the way it's structured. And so I think if The Long Walk had a bit more of that in there, that it wasn't just happy kids from suburban areas who just decided it was a bit of fun, and they actually, there was a lot of stuff like that kind of.
If it had Korean writers, if The Long Walk had Korean writers,
if Stephen King was Korean,
yeah, it would have been so much better.
On that note, I feel it's only fair to say that the entire format of deadly games with the way the Squid Game is carried out is actually an innovation from Japan. There's a very, very big subgenre of manga that started off like that, and one of the best examples I have in mind is
Battle Royale.
Battle Royale is a very old example, but I think the one that really takes it to a new level is unfortunately I don't know the English translation is Alice in Borderlands or something like that. Yeah, but I mean the anime fans would probably know what I'm talking about. But we're coming close to an hour. We're in fact over an hour, and this is no longer.
It's literally called.
This
it's
is
literally
no
called
longer
Alice in the Borderland.
Oh, okay, cool. And the long walk is long behind us, and so no more long walks. Let's get back to Kaz's story.
I'm happy that like when I'm making the point, that's when we switch back to Kaz's story.
Oh, of
all the other
course.
tangents get to live.
Of course.
God,
Actually,
you will find out how much of a Galadel I truly am.
Okay,
just enjoy
cool.
your wine.
I look forward to it. I'll take you on.
Oh no.
Anyway, it's close to an hour, and do we have anything in closing? I just want to say again, like just how well written and how tight the story is. Yeah.
Thanks, XJ. I appreciate that.
Here.
Chaps.
Okay. I like the story, as I said many times over. I love the characters, and I love the title, by the way.
Oh,
The title is awesome. Old Friends is great. Like it tells you everything that you need to know about these people. So I think the title is fantastic. I forgot to mention that.
Oh, thank you. That was the first thing that came, was the title.
The Old Friends. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So what are we tackling next week then, chaps? I'm just
Yes.
blushing from all of that.
I think we're tackling the Mare Frigorous culture by Robert.
It's not
Mar.
Mare.
Mar.
Mare. It's
Mare.
two syllables. 2 syllables. Yeah.
How do you say it fully?
Mare. It's
Oh, is that
I
Latin
mean
for
the
sea?
title, so you could say it correctly.
the Mare Frigoris culture. The
There we
Mare
go.
Frigoris is the Sea of Cold, so-called, near the North Pole of the Moon.
All right. Then.
Excellent.
Okay, so to close off, well, thank you to all the audience out there who bothered to drop in and listen to us. Like, subscribe, whatever. We will also... okay, fine.
Marketing. This is the podcast. This is our podcast marketing effort, right? Like, subscribe, whatever.
Okay, fine. Yeah, like, subscribe, comment, please. We really love it if you do that. But we will definitely host Kaz's story somewhere. We'll provide the link in the description below, and so please read it. It's because it's actually worth reading, which I can't say for a lot of short stories out there.
Nikki's.
Shots fired! Shots fired!
If only I cared.
Can take it. Galadel can take it.
If Galadel can take it, I can take
Yes, I think so.
it. He's my new role model.
Okay, well, to all the audience out there, have a nice day, and peace out, man.
Yeah,
Take care,
thanks for
guys.
joining us, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye. I really do love Nikki.